The floorboards groaned beneath my feet as I stepped into the old Victorian house. Dust motes dancing in the afternoon light that filtered through cracked windows. My son Marcus stood in the doorway behind me, his expensive leather shoes already retreating toward the porch. "Mom, I know it looks rough, but it's only temporary," he said, his voice carrying that patronizing tone he'd adopted since marrying Victoria 3 years ago. "Just until we get your apartment situation sorted out. You understand, right?" I turned to face him, my 68-year-old bones aching from the long drive. This house, my late sister Eleanor's house, had been abandoned for nearly a decade. The wallpaper peeled like old skin, water stains bloomed across the ceiling like dark flowers, and the smell of mildew hung thick in the air. "Marcus, there's no electricity, no running water," I said quietly, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "How am I supposed to—" "I'll get the utilities turned on tomorrow, I promise." He glanced at his phone, already halfway out the door. "Look, I have to get back. Victoria's hosting that charity gala tonight, and I need to help set up." According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. "You'll be fine here for one night, Mom. You're tough. Tough." That word had followed me all my life. Tough enough to raise Marcus alone after his father died. Tough enough to work 2 jobs to put him through college. Tough enough to sell my own home to help him start his law practice, when the banks wouldn't give him a loan. Tough enough, apparently, to be abandoned in a decaying house without basic necessities. "Marcus." I reached for his arm, but he was already moving away. "When will you come back?" "Couple days, tops. I'll call you." He paused at the door, and for just a moment, I saw a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, cross his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced smile he used in courtrooms. "Love you, Mom." The door closed. His car engine started. I stood in the dim hallway, listening to the sound fade into nothing, replaced by the settling groans of the old house and the frantic beating of my own heart. The first night was the hardest. I found some old blankets in a closet, musty but intact, and made a nest on the least damaged couch in what had been Eleanor's sitting room. My phone had no signal. Of course it didn't. The house sat at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown gardens and decades of neglect. In the darkness, every sound magnified. Mice skittered in the walls. The wind rattled loose shutters. I lay awake, trying to understand how my son, my beautiful boy, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, could leave me here. Morning brought weak sunlight, and the realization that Marcus hadn't left me any food. I found my emergency granola bars in my purse and ate one slowly, making it last. The water from the taps ran brown and smelled of rust. I didn't dare drink it. Day 2, I waited for Marcus's call. My phone battery dropped to 60%, then 40. I conserved it, checking only every few hours. No missed calls, no messages. I walked to the main road, a 40-minute journey that left me breathless, hoping to flag down help. But the few cars that passed didn't stop. By the time I returned to the house, my legs shook with exhaustion. On day 3, I found Eleanor's old journal in a drawer, and reading her words made me cry for the first time. She had loved this house once. Every entry spoke of garden parties and family gatherings, of life and laughter filling these now silent rooms. What had happened to us? How had love turned to this? I rationed my remaining granola bars, drank rainwater I collected in an old pot I found in the kitchen, boiling it over candles I'd discovered in a drawer. My phone died on day 4. The silence became absolute. On day 5, I started walking toward town properly, determined to reach it no matter how long it took. I made it perhaps 2 miles before Mrs. Chen, my late sister's former neighbor, spotted me from her car. The shock on her face told me how terrible I must have looked. "Margaret? My God, what happened to you?" She pulled over immediately, helping me into her passenger seat with shaking hands. Everyone thought you were living with your son in the city." I couldn't speak at first. My voice had grown rusty from disuse. When the words finally came, they tumbled out in a broken stream. Marcus, the house, the abandonment, the days alone. Mrs. Chen's expression shifted from concern to horror to barely contained rage. "That house has been condemned," she said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "The county issued notices months ago. The foundation is unstable, the roof is collapsing in places. Margaret, you could have been killed." She took me to her home, fed me soup while I sat wrapped in blankets despite the warm day, my body unable to stop shaking. She charged my phone. The moment it powered on, it exploded with notifications. 45 missed calls from Marcus, 23 voicemails, dozens of text messages, each more frantic than the last. The first voicemail, timestamped 3 days ago. "Mom, hey, trying to reach you, call me back." The tone was casual, unconcerned. The second, hours later. "Mom, seriously, pick up. I need to talk to you about something." By the 10th. "Mom, this isn't funny. Where are you?" By the 20th, his voice had changed completely. High, desperate, almost unrecognizable. "Mom, please. You have to call me. Something's happened. I need you to tell them. Please, Mom. Please." The final message, left just 2 hours ago, was barely coherent through his sobbing. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Please be alive. Please. I didn't know. Please, Mom, call me. They're saying I could go to prison. My license, my career, everything. It's all gone. And I deserve it. I know I deserve it. But please, please, just let me know you're okay." Mrs. Chen watched my face as I listened, her expression grim. "Before you call him back, there's something you should know. It's been all over the local news." She pulled up a news site on her tablet, and there it was, my son's face staring back at me from the screen. "Prominent attorney Marcus Chen Wallace, under investigation for elder abuse and fraud." The article detailed everything. How an anonymous tip had reached Adult Protective Services about an elderly woman abandoned in an unsafe property. How investigators discovered that Marcus had been systematically draining my accounts for months. The money I thought was going into a joint investment for my future care was actually funding his lifestyle. The luxury car, the vacation home, the expensive renovations to his house, all of it financed with money I'd entrusted to him. The condo he claimed to be arranging for me, it never existed. He'd planned to leave me in Eleanor's condemned house, indefinitely, out of sight, while he controlled my assets. But that wasn't what destroyed him. The house, the condemned, structurally unsound house he'd abandoned me in, had a history. 3 weeks before he left me there, the county had sent certified letters to all property owners on that street, warning them of dangerous foundation issues related to old mining tunnels beneath the properties. The letters included bold, underlined warnings that occupancy of these structures could result in injury or death, and that property owners could face criminal liability if anyone was harmed. Marcus had signed for the letter. His signature was right there in the county records. He had known. He had known the house was dangerous, that the floors could collapse, that I could die there, and he'd left me anyway. The investigation had started when Mrs. Chen herself, worried after seeing lights in Eleanor's house and knowing it was condemned, had called the authorities. What they found in Marcus's files during their investigation painted a picture of calculated cruelty. Detailed financial records showing systematic theft, text messages to Victoria complaining about the burden of his mother, even a consultation with a lawyer about having me declared incompetent so he could gain power of attorney. But the universe has a strange sense of justice. The same week I was suffering in that house, Marcus's firm was being reviewed for partnership. Part of the review process included a routine background check, more thorough than usual, because they were expanding into elder law, of all things. When Adult Protective Services opened their investigation, it flagged in the system. The firm's managing partners saw the alert before Marcus even knew it existed. They suspended him immediately. Then they started their own investigation into his cases and finances. What they found was damning. Client funds mishandled, trust accounts used as personal piggy banks, vulnerable clients overcharged and underserved. My son, it turned out, hadn't just betrayed his mother. He'd been betraying everyone. Within 72 hours of leaving me in that house, Marcus's entire life had collapsed, his partnership revoked, his cases reassigned, his assets frozen pending investigation. Victoria, learning that their lifestyle was built on stolen money and that her husband faced potential felony charges, had filed for divorce and kicked him out. He was staying in a motel, his legal career in ruins, facing criminal charges that could mean years in prison. And somewhere in the middle of this catastrophe, unable to reach me, he'd finally realized what he'd done. Not because his conscience suddenly woke up, but because he needed me. He needed me to tell investigators it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd agreed to stay in the house, that the financial arrangements were consensual. He needed me to save him the way I'd always saved him. The irony was, I would have. Even after everything, if he'd asked me 3 days earlier, I probably would have tried to protect him. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We protect our children even when they don't deserve it. But he hadn't just left me in that house for a night. He'd left me for 5 days without checking on me once. 5 days when he was more concerned about his image, his career, his social obligations. 5 days when I could have died, and he wouldn't have known until someone found my body. Mrs. Chen put her hand over mine. What do you want to do? I looked at my phone, at those 45 missed calls, at the messages that tracked his descent from inconvenience to panic to despair. I thought about the boy who used to make me dandelion crowns, who'd cried in my arms when his goldfish died, who'd promised at his father's grave that he'd always take care of me. Then I thought about being left in the dark, alone, hungry, scared, in a house that could have collapsed on me at any moment. I want to tell the truth, I said. The interview with Adult Protective Services took 3 hours. I told them everything, every detail, every promise Marcus had broken, every warning sign I'd ignored because I wanted to believe my son still loved me. I showed them the text messages where he'd assured me the house was safe, just a little old. I explained how he'd gradually taken control of my finances, always with reasonable explanations, always making me feel like I was being cared for rather than robbed. The detective, a woman named Sarah Rodriguez, listened with an expression that moved from professional sympathy to genuine anger. Mrs. Wallace, you know your testimony will likely result in criminal charges. I know. He's your son. I know that too. I met her eyes. But he left me in a condemned building. He stole money I'd saved for 40 years, and he didn't even check on me until his own life fell apart. My voice cracked. My son died a long time ago, detective. I don't know who that man is. The news coverage that followed was intense. Local station, then regional, then somehow it went national. Lawyer abandons mother in condemned house, played out across screens nationwide. My phone, once silent except for Marcus's desperate calls, now rang constantly with reporters, advocacy groups, support organizations. Marcus's friends and colleagues, distancing themselves, spoke to reporters about troubling signs they'd ignored. Victoria gave an interview describing her shock at discovering the financial abuse, painting herself as another victim. The State Bar Association opened formal proceedings. The district attorney, facing public pressure, announced they were pursuing multiple felony charges. Through it all, Marcus kept calling. I didn't answer. What was there to say? His voicemails changed tone. The panic faded, replaced by a hollow desperation. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did, but please, just talk to me. Please, I'm your son. But that was the thing he didn't understand. Being someone's son isn't a shield, it's a responsibility. And he'd abandoned that responsibility the moment he prioritized his ambition and comfort over my life. 3 weeks after Mrs. Chen found me, I sat in a courtroom, the defendant this time on the other side. Marcus looked 10 years older, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face gone. When his eyes met mine, I saw him mouth the words, "I'm sorry." Maybe he was. Maybe in that moment, facing the consequences of his choices, he genuinely regretted what he'd done. But remorse that comes only when you're caught isn't really remorse. It's just fear wearing a conscience's mask. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically, the financial exploitation, the knowing endangerment, the pattern of abuse. Marcus's lawyer, court-appointed since his assets were frozen, tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, a son overwhelmed by caregiving responsibilities who made terrible mistakes. But then they showed the text message, the one Victoria had turned over during the divorce proceedings, the one Marcus had sent her the night he left me at the house. Problem solved, won't have to worry about her for a while. Maybe nature will take care of things for us. The courtroom went silent. Marcus's face crumbled. Even his lawyer looked sick. The judge, a stern woman in her 70s, removed her glasses, and stared at Marcus for a long moment. Mr. Wallace, in 30 years on the bench, I have seen many things, but the calculated cruelty of your actions toward the woman who gave you life, who sacrificed everything for you, leaves me genuinely shaken. He sentenced Marcus to 4 years in prison for elder abuse and financial exploitation, followed by 5 years probation. His law license was permanently revoked. The court ordered restitution of every penny he'd taken, plus damages. But the real punishment was subtler than any sentence. Marcus's name became synonymous with filial betrayal. His story became a cautionary tale, shared in nursing homes and retirement communities, used by advocacy groups and training materials. He would carry this shame for the rest of his life. As I left the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. I paused at the top of the steps, looking back at the building where my son's life had ended, not with tragedy, but with justice. "Do you forgive him?" someone shouted. I thought about that question for a long time. Forgiveness is complicated when the person who hurt you shared your blood, your home, your history. When you remember teaching him to ride a bike and helping him study for exams and holding him when his heart was broken. "I forgive the boy he was," I said finally. "I mourn the man he could have been, but I cannot excuse what he chose to become." 6 months later, I lived in a small apartment in a senior community, my own apartment, paid for with my recovered funds, and managed by a trustee not related to me. Mrs. Chen visited twice a week. I'd made friends, joined a book club, even started volunteering at a local shelter. Marcus wrote me letters from prison. I received them but didn't open them. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday enough time would pass that I could read his words without feeling the terror of those 5 days, the betrayal, the fundamental breaking of the bond between mother and child. But not yet. People asked me if I was angry that my own testimony sent my son to prison. The answer was both yes and no. Yes, because what mother wants to see her child caged? But no, because he hadn't left me any choice. He'd gambled with my life for his convenience. He'd stolen my security for his luxury. He'd broken something sacred, and broken things have consequences. Karma, people called it, divine justice, poetic retribution. But I thought it was simpler than that. Marcus had built his life on a foundation of lies and exploitation. And like the condemned house he'd trapped me in, that foundation was always going to collapse. I wasn't his punishment. I was just the person who'd finally told the truth. On the 1-year anniversary of that terrible day, I visited Eleanor's old house. The county had torn it down finally, the lot cleared and marked for redevelopment. I stood where the sitting room had been, where I'd spent those dark nights wondering if I'd die there, and felt nothing but peace. I had survived. Not just those 5 days, but everything that came after. The betrayal, the publicity, the painful choice between protecting my son and protecting myself. I had survived. And in surviving, I discovered something important. I was stronger without him than I'd ever been trying to hold on to a relationship that had become toxic. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Wallace, this is Cheryl Tomlin. I saw your story on the news last year. I'm in a similar situation with my daughter, and I don't know what to do. Would you be willing to talk?" I closed my eyes, feeling the sun warm on my face, and thought about all the other mothers out there, caught in the same web of obligation and love and denial that had trapped me. "Yes," I said, "I'll talk. Where do you want to meet?" Because that's what you do with pain. You transform it. You take the worst thing that ever happened to you and use it to help someone else avoid the same fate. Marcus had tried to bury me in that old house, to make me invisible, to erase the inconvenience I represented. Instead, he'd given me a voice. He'd given me purpose. He'd given me the freedom that comes from having nothing left to lose and no one left to protect except myself. The karma wasn't in his punishment. The karma was in my liberation. I walked away from that empty lot, my phone still pressed to my ear, already arranging to meet Cheryl for coffee. Behind me, workers were clearing the last debris, preparing to build something new on ground that had held so much pain. That's what we do. We clear away what's broken, what's unsafe, what's beyond saving. And then, if we're lucky, we build something better in its place. Marcus had 45 chances to make things right. 45 phone calls when he could have apologized, confessed, thrown himself on my mercy. But every single one of those calls was about saving himself, not about saving me. In the end, we all get what we deserve. Not from the universe, or from God, or from karma, but from the simple accumulation of our choices. Marcus chose greed over love, convenience over duty, ambition over honor. And those choices, like water wearing away stone, had eroded everything he'd built until nothing remained but the truth. I didn't need him to call 46 times. I didn't need his apologies, or his remorse, or his regret. I needed only what I'd found in that terrible house during those dark days: my own strength, my own worth, my own unshakable certainty that I deserved better, and that, more than any punishment the courts could impose, was the real karma. Not his fall, but my rise. Not his loss, but my freedom. The story of the son who abandoned his mother in a condemned house would be told and retold, a modern parable about ingratitude and consequence. But the story I carried in my heart was different. It was the story of a woman who survived, who spoke truth, who refused to sacrifice her dignity to spare someone who'd sacrificed her life for his comfort. That was my story. And finally, after 68 years of being someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's caretaker, it was only mine. As I drove home through the familiar streets, past houses filled with families who might love each other, or might be hiding the same dark secrets that had festered in mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not for reconciliation. Some things, once broken, stay broken. But hope for myself, for my future, for all the days I'd been given back when I walked out of that house alive. Marcus had tried to make me disappear. Instead, he disappeared himself, into a prison, of his own making, behind walls built from his own choices. And I was finally truly free.